underway, just a quick housekeeping thing. Well, first of all, if you can hear any noises in the background, that's a couple of dogs, so I do apologise for that. And also with Zoom meetings, with group meetings like this, they will cut out after 40 minutes, just on the plan that I have. So if we haven't finished and it does cut out, I'm about to send out a second email to you all who have registered, which will just give you a direct link to another Zoom meeting. We'll only need that if we do cut out, but at least you will have it there. And as I am recording this, what I will do is to everyone who has registered, I will send this to you if you can't make the second one as well. But I do encourage you to hang around for this one just in case any questions arise. So that's just been sent out. Send me an email if you haven't received that. Okay. Let's admit a few stragglers. Okay. So as I mentioned before, if everyone could just mute their own computer, that would be great, just so you can hear me, but there's just no background noise. And if anything does happen that I can all of a sudden not be heard, please do let me know. So thank you all for coming. So what I'm going to go through today is discuss the OHS obligations for employers and employees, discuss some healthy practices and ergonomic advice that you can pass straight on to your employees and you can implement as employers. Just briefly discuss how we're trying to assist employees in this, I guess, different landscape of working. Then at the end, I'll take some questions. If it's okay, please try to wait until the end unless it's extremely pressing with your questions. And if you don't want to ask questions via this format, that's completely fine. Just email them through and I'm more than happy to answer them in that way. And I do just need to mention from the outset that nothing that we do discuss here is legal advice. So if you are needing specific advice surrounding this topic, please do seek independent advice. So we'll begin with the OHS obligations for employers. No doubt you're all familiar with the legislation. I'm basing this off the Victorian legislation. It's pretty much the same across the country. So for all intensive purposes, this will apply regardless of which state you're tuning in from. And the basic overarching, employers must provide and maintain for employees a working environment that is safe and without risks. Now, it's important to emphasise the word "and." So it's over this period of time, it's going to be very important that employers monitor their employees to ensure that their working environments remain safe. And this will obviously be much more difficult to do now that everyone is working remotely. As far as what that legislation really means, so there's a fair question as to whether the word "provide" can be interpreted very literally to mean that employers need to purchase all of this equipment for employees to create, a safe working environment similar to what would be in the office. That's up for I guess, negotiation as to how it would be interpreted. But if it is interpreted literally, then it would be my suggestion to consider to be seeking advice before you're purchasing equipment for your employees, just to make sure that you're actually getting equipment that is going to achieve what it is setting out to achieve. The legislation's pretty clear on a couple of things that does mean that employers fail to meet this obligation, and particularly relevant to this situation with working from home is a failure to provide or maintain safe systems of work, and a failure to provide appropriate information or instructional training to employees as is necessary to enable the employees to perform their work in a way that is safe. So bringing this back to just got a quick message. Is anyone else having sound problems? If there's a chat thing down the bottom of the Zoom conference, if anyone can't hear me, could they please let me know? No. So just for Ruth, yeah, it must be on Ruth's end. That's okay. So yeah. Okay, so basically an example of employers failing to meet this. So not assisting employees to set up a suitable home office working environment. And this could include education, equipment, or things such as professional advice to assist them to set up their own workstation. Not maintaining this safe and healthy work environment. It could be something as simple as, employees or failing to continually to check on employees over this period from both a physical and mental perspective. And this could be achieved as simply as sending out a weekly email, requesting feedback, and providing options for relief, like meditation options, yoga classes, even just little comedy things online, exercise advice. There really isn't any limit to the imagination here, and you will know your workforce better than I will, obviously, so you will know what they will hopefully positively respond to. And also, many employees will never have worked from home, and if they have, it's unlikely that they have done so for an extended period of time. So it's highly unlikely that most people have the equipment in their home office similar to what they have in the office. So I think it would be drawing a little bit of a long bow to expect employees to be able to conjure up, a safe and comfortable workstation from their existing furniture without providing them with some education to do this. This would be, I guess, for me, something that's pretty clearly a failure to meet that obligation. But that is, once again, it's really always up for interpretation. Another obligation is to monitor the health of employees. It's obviously very, very easy to do this in the workplace because you're seeing them every day. Much harder to do when they're working remotely. This is something that really should be a focus of employers from an OHS perspective, and strategies definitely need to be put in place to make sure that employees feel comfortable and confident to contact whoever they need to contact within your organisation if they are experiencing discomfort or pain whilst they're working from home, either quickly or into the future, because no doubt it is going to occur for a lot of people. And once again, this could be as simple as a weekly email. My suggestion would be from HR or OHS managers directly to employees, just asking for feedback and specifically checking in to see how people are going. Another part of the legislation makes clear that employers must engage suitably qualified people to provide OH&S advice to the employer concerning the health and safety of their employees. Now, in a regular working environment, often organisations, and I know a lot of you listening in will have this person, will have an OHS person within the organisation to provide that advice when workers are in the office. And it's quite easy to do this because the office setting is a very structured and controlled setting. One thing to keep in mind is that those health and ergonomic risks associated with working from home are not likely to always be the same as those in the office. So office-related policies and procedures may not cover everything that's going to arise or occur in the home office. And that's just something to really take into consideration. You may need to change some of these OHS and injury reporting policies that you have in place. That it's really going to, it'll have to be a case-by-case basis as to if anything arises with their employees, but do just keep in mind that they are different. The risks will be more within the workplace, as I'm sure within the home office, as I'm sure you're already well aware. So if you do need assistance with that, my suggestion would be to seek assistance in that regard. Another key obligation for employers is to make sure that they consult with employees. Very relevant to the home office is for employers to consult with employees in identifying hazards or risks, and also to consult with employees with respect to any proposed changes to the way that work is going to be performed. So coming back to consulting with employees with identifying hazards or risks, as I just mentioned, there's going to be new risks associated with working from home. And unfortunately as well, these risks will be so varied depending upon the environments that your employees are working in. Some employees will have a great home office setup, and some will quite literally be working from a kitchen bench, or touch wood, hopefully not, but doing a lot of work from the couch. So that has to be taken into consideration, and some strategy should be put in place to be able to get feedback and consult with as many employees as possible on the issues that they're finding that they're having, because the subjective feedback from employees will be even more important now when this is a workplace, a working environment that is very hard to monitor and control. A very simple way could be to provide your employees with a self-assessment checklist. Employees can essentially go through this checklist and then fill in the blanks, and by the end of the checklist, they will hopefully have identified some risks if there are any. Hopefully there are none. But if they have identified them, then they can provide that checklist straight to you as the employer, and any appropriate action can be taken if it's reasonable to do so. Then the only other really option in respect of that, other than direct consultation between employer and employee, is to seek advice from external people who can assist employees and then provide that feedback onto the employers. The proposed changes to the way work is performed, a consultation with employees is necessary there as well. Definitely working from home for prolonged periods is a new concept for the majority of people anyway. So once again, employees certainly should be involved in the discussion about how that work is going to be performed, and that will be different for each organisation. But things as simple as discussing the working hours, scheduling meetings. So are those meetings going to be back to back to back to back, or are scheduled breaks going to be put into the calendar and made, lock them in stone? Because a key issue that I think is going to arise is now staff have no reason to leave the screen all day. So scheduling breaks and discussing that with employees will be a great way to reduce the risk of an overuse injury from occurring, because within the office setting, often staff have to walk to meetings or do other tasks in between meetings. So keeping things like that in mind will be a great strategy to prevent injuries from occurring, but also consulting with employees about that is an important way for employers to ensure that they meet that obligation. And as far as the obligation is concerned, if you are required to consult with employees for any of the reasons that I've just mentioned, the legislation is very clear that employees must be given a reasonable opportunity to express their views, and those views must be taken into consideration. This is particularly pertinent to this case because as employers, it's going to be difficult to intimately understand and know each working environment for each employee, particularly those larger organisations who might be tuned in, who have hundreds of employees scattered around the country. So it's a collaborative process. Even after this, putting together some sort of an email or a document and sending that out to all employees, asking for their opinion and thoughts that they have so far from working at home, and inviting employees to continually provide that feedback. And I think it is important to invite them to do so. And I know it's a difficult situation because no organisation has an unlimited bank account that can just purchase all this equipment that everyone wants. And the legislation doesn't necessarily require that. It is only, doing what is reasonably practicable, and budget comes into that, particularly in these sort of circumstances where, most organisations are scrambling for cash. So I don't think there's any need to fear for that, but it is important to ensure that it is a collaborative process with the employees. So that's an overview of the key obligations for employers towards their employees. the obligations for employees are much simpler to grasp and discuss. Relative to this concept of working from home, there's only two real key ones, and that is that employees must take reasonable care for their own health and safety, and employees must cooperate with their employer with respect to any action that the employer may take in complying with the relevant legislation. So taking reasonable care for your own health and safety as an employee, this is something that you should definitely make sure your employees are aware of, because they're going to play a huge part in making sure that they remain healthy and safe whilst they're working away from home. So providing them with this information so that they're fully aware of their obligations, I think will go a great way to ensuring that they do remain healthy, because it's trying to empower them to take control of their own health and safety away from the workplace. So as an example of that, if an employee chooses to sit at their desk literally all day, that's not taking reasonable care for their own health and safety, as it's likely to lead to an overuse or an ergonomic injury or bad eyesight. But whatever you want to focus on for the symptoms that it might generate, it's just not, in my opinion, taking reasonable care for their own health and safety. So having in place strategies to prevent that will help employees to meet their side of the coin. And as far as employees cooperating with employers, their employees really are under some sort of obligation to ensure that they follow the strategies that employers are putting in place, whatever they may be, providing they're reasonable strategies and not too invasive, and are actually going to be beneficial. Employees really don't have too many options, and nor should they really want to. I think if employers are trying to assist them, most people will be pretty receptible to taking that assistance and advice. So they're the two main obligations for employees. Quite simple. If we move on now to the next part, I just want to provide some little tips and some ideas for healthy practices and ergonomic tips at home. I've got about 5 or 6 here that I'd like to go through. And then if anyone has any questions after that, I'll be more than happy to answer them, or you can send your questions through via email. The first one I'd like to discuss is something that I've briefly mentioned already, and it's allowing headspace time to prevent staff from burning out. And that's both from a mental and a physical perspective. So making sure that there are allocated breaks throughout the day that are locked into the employee's calendar, and nothing really gets in the way of that, almost akin to your textbook smoker or coffee break whilst people are at work. I think it's important not just to suggest this to employees. If you still have control over your employees' calendars, it'll be my advice to actually pencil these blocks in, because it's going to prevent people from just working non-stop throughout the day, and also just staying on the screen all day without a break. So this concept of being at home and not needing to go anywhere for meetings, I think there's even an incentive for employees to schedule meetings back to back without a break, because it's a path of least resistance. It's a way for us to be, as humans, to be lazy, but it will increase mental and physical fatigue. And if either of these two things happen, it increases the likelihood of employees sitting in very awkward postures, like slouching back into the chair or really leaning forward into the computer, which increases the likelihood of injury occurring or an overuse, pain developing. But it also raises, which is outside the scope of my expertise, but it raises serious mental health issues if people are mentally burnt out because they're just not allowing themselves time to rest. And then just making sure that a lunch break, once again, is definitely scheduled and locked into the calendar. Another concept is to encourage staff to participate in some sort of physical activity. This will do wonders for both mental and physical health again, and greatly reduce the risk of any physical injuries developing from sitting all day. So breaking up that working day, but also doing physical activity outside of working hours, like they usually would in the workplace. And this could be made a little bit enjoyable and fun. So you could even consider trying to run some intra-office competitions online. You know, if people have treadmills or bikes within their house, you could do things like push-up competitions. There's something floating around on social media at the moment where, you know, someone does 10 push-ups and recommends 10 push-ups to 10 other people on Instagram. You know, it's just something very simple and fun to try and keep people moving. Or given that people are almost locked in their house, having like a step count competition. You know, the concept of people trying to get 10,000 steps in a day is nearly going to be impossible now. But that could be quite a fun competition within a workplace to see who can get the most steps in the house whilst they're working from home. It'll keep employees physically active and healthy, but I also feel that it might help to create a little bit of closeness and camaraderie in these times of isolation, which is very important for physical and mental health. Something that I think will be beneficial is if staff have access to apps and resources such as meditation apps or relaxation apps. It might be of assistance to some people. That is outside the scope of my expertise. Again, I'm more focused on the physical side of things and the legal side of things. That's probably more into the mental aspect, but from personal experience, I know that those things are very beneficial. As far as furniture is concerned, I've had a few questions already about desks and desk heights. So just for your information, the Australian standard for a desk height is 72 centimetres. So keep this in mind if you're buying desks for your staff or if you're recommending staff go and get them. But also keep in mind that this 72 centimetres, even though it's the standard, is too high for most people in the office. So I'm 179 centimetres and that's too high for me. So if you think of it that way, most people are shorter than me within an office. I'm the average height for a male. So more than not are shorter than me. So they may need other equipment as well. A very effective and cheap way to improve the ergonomics of a home office is to allow your staff access to an external keyboard and mouse. I'm assuming that the majority of people will be working with a laptop, which then puts people in a very awkward posture. You'll get access to some information next week about this, by the way. But if staff have access to an external keyboard and mouse, they can then stack their laptop up on books a little bit further away than if they were leaning forward. And then they can use their external keyboard and mouse and try and position themselves in the exact same position that they would as if they were in the office. So you don't need to go and buy a laptop riser. Books will suffice. The key pieces of equipment there are the keyboard and the mouse. That will make a huge difference. That's definitely the cheapest option to improve ergonomics in the largest possible way within the home office, irrespective of what the rest of the setup looks like. And then on top of that, if you weren't going down that path, I'd say the number one way would be a proper chair. Once again, you'll get access to some photos, which we took a couple of days ago, which just shows the changes that can be made with individual items. And you'll see that when you do put in place an ergonomic chair, it does make a huge difference. They're a little bit more expensive, obviously, but if you had the funds, that would be a great option for staff. And then, so unfortunately, I guess with home offices, there are so many variances, so it's difficult to provide that solution that's tailored towards a particular individual. What we're going to do is we're going to try, which you would have received some correspondence about this already, we're going to offer our online assessment, our ergonomic assessments in an online format. These will help employers to meet those OHS obligations that I've mentioned. And it will enable us to guide employees through the process of setting up their own workstation. And probably just as important as that is to provide them with as much information as possible to empower them moving forwards within their home office. So I'll send out some more information about that on Monday. And if you have any questions, please do feel free to let me know. Now that covers basically what I want to go through. Now I'm conscious of the time. If anyone needs to head off, please feel free to do so. I'm happy to take as many questions as possible. Keep in mind that I think within the next 5 to 10 minutes, this could cut out. If it does, you will have received an email with a second link. I'll be waiting in there, so please feel free to get back in there if you would like to continue asking questions, or you can send me your questions directly by email and I can answer those privately that way. But otherwise, if anyone has any questions, you can either type them in the chat box down the bottom, or you can unmute your computer and fire away. So we've got about, all right, so what have we got here? So what about standing desks? Are any issues other than manual handling? Okay, so we'll go with the first one first. So what about standing desks? Absolutely. So if anyone has been a client of mine for a while, you'll know that I am a big advocate of standing desks. I guess the reason that we didn't focus on them is because of the expense of them. Very conscious of trying to provide a solution that is as cost effective as possible. If you have the resources to provide all of your employees with a sit-stand desk at home, absolutely go for your life. Unless they have an injury, I don't think there's a negative associated with it. With that said, if someone gets a standing desk and they haven't stood at work previously, and then they try and stand all day, keep in mind that that's introducing a new problem for that person. And if they then sit down and they've got themselves a crappy chair, or they haven't set up their computer screen at the correct position, or they don't have an external keyboard or mouse, they're just going to sit in an awkward posture. So bang for your buck, I would say the best thing is still a chair. If you're going to spend in vicinity of about $300, you could get a great chair. Standing desks are going to be much more expensive than that, because we actually recommend the standalone standing desks, not the on-desk units, for OHS reasons, which I can elaborate within an email if you would like further information on that. So I think if money is an issue, I'd steer clear of them. If money's not an issue, I'd go for your life. But it's something that staff will still need to be provided with a little bit of education, and care should be taken if they haven't stood at work for a while before, which most of us haven't, even those who have standing desks. Any issues other than manual handling? Yes, so if they're taking their own office chair home, no, I would say that's the main issue, is the manual handling side of things, unless you have intra-organisational policies around that as well. But if they're going out and buying their own chair, that's where I think more issues arise, because if you're saying to an employee, go and get a chair, and they're using your money, and then they just go and buy, a chair that really lacks adjustability, I'm really not sure of the positive effect of that. And then the question is raised, is the employer then encouraging the employee to just buy anything, or is the employee not putting in enough time and effort to help the employee to acquire something that is more suitable? So that's one other thing to consider with an office chair. But if it's just taking the one from the office, I think manual handling is the key one there for sure. So not carrying it for as long as possible would be ideal. If it's got wheels, just wheel it to the car. But also employees, once again, need to take reasonable care for their own health and safety. So if they're doing silly things taking that chair home, that's really on the employee. You just need to make sure you warn the employees and do as much as you possibly can to help them. From a mental health perspective, the question from Philip SBR, I don't know that. I'll look into that as well, because that's of great interest to me. So I'll be doing some research on that today and tomorrow, and I'll send out an email to everyone if I can find it. An attachable backrest to support their back. My personal preference is no for that. Anyone who's ever had me in to do ergonomic assessments within the office has probably seen me take many of those off chairs. If the chair is terrible, so, you know, the chairs that I'm sitting on at the moment are just a basic kitchen bench chair where I'm filming this from. So if I was doing a lot of work here, Alexis, I probably would put something behind my back. In some of the videos and documents that you will see next week, we've actually taken photos with some towels, which have a great effect. So I would suggest to people that they don't need to go and buy one of those attachable backrests. Just use a rolled up towel, because it's much more flexible in what you can achieve. And often those external backrests push you forward significantly in the chair, and that's why I don't like them. But if people are using them and not having problems, then that's okay. It's really a case-by-case basis, but I would personally be just trying a rolled up towel versus one of those attachable things to a backrest, just from what I've seen them, or the lack of benefit that I've seen my clients get from them. But if someone does get benefit, by all means, go for it. So that seems to be it. So there's no more questions coming in. I'll just quickly check the email. No, so no other questions via email. So, all right, that seems to be everything covered. If anyone does have any questions, please feel free to send them through by email, and I'll be more than happy to answer them. And if you're happy for them to be shared, please do let me know, and I'll actually forward the answers on to everyone who has joined today, just to really try and provide as much help and useful content to you as I can. And you'll also receive some more information from me next week, just summarising what it is that myself and my team are trying to do to assist all of you in these different working times. So thank you all for joining the conference this morning, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your week and everything's going smoothly with this new working concept. Thank you.